They believed me. That was the strange part. I was sick in my room, wrapped in a blanket with just a glass of water beside me. Someone texted, "Do you need anything?" And I wrote back, "No, I'm okay." Then I stared at the message after I sent it, hoping they would not believe me too quickly. I had been living abroad for a few months when it happened. Nothing dramatic, just a small fever, a quiet room, and the particular loneliness of being unwell in a place where no one automatically knows what care is supposed to look like. Someone asked if I needed anything. I said, "No, I'm okay." Automatic, polite. The answer I knew how to give before I knew what I actually needed. Maybe I wanted someone to say, "No, really, did you eat? Do you have medicine? I can leave something at your door." Not because I wanted to be helpless, but because in the world I knew, care often arrived by gently crossing the first refusal. Sometimes "I'm okay" meant, "I don't want to burden you." Sometimes it meant, "I'm embarrassed to need help." Sometimes it meant, "Please ask once more so I can receive without having to ask first." But they took it at face value. They took me at my word. And I sat there, not angry, not even sure I was hurt, just confused by the silence that came after being respected. I had thought living abroad would mean learning another language, but the harder adjustment was quieter than that. I was not just speaking differently. I was carrying a different grammar for care, for refusal, for humility, and for friendship. This is one person's memory of that, not an explanation of Korea, not a rule about Koreans. Just the moment I first saw from the outside what I had been speaking all along. The thing about the way I said no is that it was never quite a no. It was a no that hoped to be heard as, "Please ask once more." In the world I had grown up in, refusal had a texture to it. You softened it first, wrapped it in hesitation, in reasons, in a kind of preemptive apology. Not because you were being dishonest, but because directness felt like a small violence, and consideration meant absorbing the sharp edge of a thing before you passed it on. Maybe, I'll see how it goes, it might be a little difficult. These were not always maybes. Sometimes they were refusal in a different register. They meant, "Please don't make me say it harder. Give me room to refuse again, so the second no can become the real one." This was not only my personality, though my personality was there too. I was quiet, careful, slow to show need. But I had also grown up inside a social world where people often did not ask only once, where "no, it's okay" could mean "I don't want to burden you," where "I'm fine" could mean "Please notice that I am not," where the second offer was not pressure exactly. It was a small bridge, a way of saying, "I know you had to refuse first, now you can receive." But abroad, maybe sounded like maybe. I'll see sounded like possibility. It might be difficult sounded like a problem someone could solve, and "no, I'm okay" sounded like "no, I'm okay." So invitations continued, help stepped back, and I found myself saying yes to things I had already refused inside, or sitting alone after I had secretly hoped someone would insist. Not because anyone was unkind, but because my refusal had been too soft to survive the translation. I had made my no so quiet that no one could find it. I noticed it moving in the other direction, too. A few weeks into a new job, after a presentation I had spent 3 nights preparing, a colleague stopped me in the corridor and said, "That was genuinely good." Simple, warm, nothing asked in return. And before I could hold it, my hands were already giving it back. Oh, not really. I made so many mistakes. The topic was interesting. That made it easier. She looked at me the way people look when they are not sure what to do with the answer they have been given, and I heard myself, as if from a small distance, still reducing, still apologizing. I was not trying to be dishonest. I was trying not to look too pleased with myself. I had learned that humility meant lowering yourself before anyone else had to, that a compliment held too openly was something uncomfortably close to pride. So you made it smaller, returned it, softened it. Some of this was me, my shyness, my discomfort with being seen, but even that shyness had been shaped somewhere, rewarded, polished, given good manners to wear. In that corridor, I understood that this was a reflex, old, automatic, trained so deep into me that I had mistaken it for who I was. Receiving was a skill I had never learned, not because no one had been kind to me, but because kindness offered to you was something you handled with care, not something you simply let yourself hold. Care had its own grammar, too. I noticed it most clearly when the bill arrived. Coffee first, then lunch, then dinner. A small table, 2 cups, the little pause after the last sip when everyone knows the moment is coming. In Korea, or at least in the world I had known, the bill was not only a bill. It could become a small performance of care, a choreography. "No, I'll get this. No, I will. You paid last time. Then next time you buy. No, really, I've got it." Sometimes the argument was half real, half ritual. Sometimes the person who paid was not the person with more money, but the person who wanted to say, "I thought of you first. Let me make this one easy for you. Let there be a next time." So abroad, my hand still moved first, before thought, before calculation. "I'll get this." And often the other person would simply say, "Oh, thanks." And that was it. No second reach, no ritual resistance, no warm little fight, just acceptance. They were not wrong. They were not ungrateful. They were simply receiving what I had offered. But something in me would be left strangely suspended. The gesture had gone out into the room and returned without its echo. Not generous, not exactly, a little exposed, as if I had spoken a sentence in a language no one was answering, because what I had meant was not only, "I can pay," it was, "I want to take care of this moment. I want this to mean we are not counting too coldly." Without the ritual around it, the meaning thinned. It became just a coffee, just a lunch, just a card touching a machine. And sometimes that was better, cleaner, lighter. I had to learn that, too. Splitting the bill did not always mean distance. Sometimes clarity itself was a kind of care. So I learned, slowly, to read the room, to split, to offer, to stop turning every small expense into a measure of closeness.
And later, with friends who had become closer, the gesture began to answer back. Sometimes they reached first. Sometimes we had our own small argument over who would pay. And I felt the old warmth return, but in a different accent. What felt Korean in me was the amount of meaning I had folded into the gesture before anyone else had agreed to read it that way. It was not just paying. It was a whole grammar of care, pride, affection, and return. Abroad, that grammar did not disappear. It simply had to become more conscious.
Friendship had grammar too. This part took longer to understand. At first, people felt open, sometimes more open than I was used to. They used my name quickly. They asked how I felt. There was freedom in it, a room where age did not enter before me, a conversation where I did not have to locate myself before speaking. I could disagree without feeling the whole room tilt. And some part of me, the part that had always been slightly braced, began, slowly, to unclench. But after a while, I began to notice another difference. Everyone was friendly, but friendly was not always friendship, not in the way my body knew it. Friendship, as I had learned it, had density. It remembered, it followed up, it asked again, it noticed the thing you tried not to say. It knew when your "I'm fine" was not quite fine. It treated time together not as an event, but as accumulation. Of course, that kind of friendship could also be too much. It could hold too tightly. It could turn love into duty. So I am not romanticizing it, but still, it held. Then, one afternoon, about a year in, someone asked me a question I was not prepared for. We were walking somewhere unremarkable, early evening, a quiet street between two places, and she stopped walking, turned, and said, "How are you, really?" She meant it as an actual question. My first instinct was to give her something manageable, something warm but light, something that would let the conversation continue without requiring me to actually arrive in it. But she waited. The careful self, the edited self, the one trained to take up exactly the right amount of space, began, very quietly, to put itself down. What came out of my mouth was something closer to the truth than I usually allowed myself in company. I stayed there for a moment with whatever had just been said. I remember the feeling afterward, not exactly vulnerability, more like a window being opened in a room where the air had gone stale. That day, I understood that another grammar could also be kind, direct, unguarded, asking for the real answer, not instead of what I already knew, alongside it, a new way of being asked, and slowly, a new way of answering. Later, there were smaller moments. A cafe table, a bill between two people, my hand moving first, then stopping, a small breath, a smile. Let's split it. But nothing broke. The room did not lose its warmth. It simply stayed clear. Another day, someone complimented something I had done. I felt the old sentence rise. No, not really. Instead, I let it pass through me once and said, "Thank you." Only that. Another time, Someone asked if I needed help, and I heard myself say, "Yes, actually. Could you?" Just a need spoken before it had time to become an ache. These were not victories, they were small translations. Care, but with a boundary. Humility, but without disappearance. Refusal, but clear enough to be heard. And still, I kept parts of the old grammar. I still believe there is tenderness in the second ask. I still understand the warmth of fighting gently over the bill. I still love the quiet intelligence of being noticed before speaking. I just know now that these things are not universal. They are forms, precise forms, beautiful sometimes, heavy sometimes. Maybe growing between cultures does not mean replacing one grammar with another. Maybe it means knowing, in the moment, which one you are speaking, knowing when I am being kind and when I am disappearing. When I think back to that text, "Do you need anything?" and my answer, "No, I'm okay," I feel something I have taken a long time to name. It was not embarrassment, not exactly. It was the first time I had watched my own grammar fail in plain sight. And the strange thing is how much had to go quiet before I could hear what had been there all along. Because the grammar I was carrying had been invisible to me for years. It lived underneath my actual words, in the pause before I answered, in the compliment I tried to return, in the bill I reached for too quickly, in the second offer of food, in the refusal that quietly hoped to be refused back. These were not habits exactly. They were a way of being in relationship, quiet, particular, and so deeply assumed that I had long since stopped seeing them as choices. It was only when they stopped working that I could finally see what they had been doing. And now I find myself wondering, how many of the things we call personality are actually grammar? I still say, "No, I'm okay," sometimes, and sometimes I still mean, "Please ask once more." Old grammar, slower to change than I expected, but now I know what I am saying. Maybe that is how it starts, not by learning a new language overnight, not by leaving the old one behind, but by finally hearing, clearly, the one you have been speaking all along.